Hello and welcome to the Dream Team Professor podcast. My name is Scott and in this episode we're looking at the top players to target in Game Week 37, Sun Dream Team, the final game week of the Dream Team season. So the deadline is Sunday, 2:30 p.m, so it's a bit of a strange deadline. All games kicking off at 4 p.m. on the Sunday. I'm currently away, some might say on the beach, so away from my holiday currently, but yeah, if you notice any difference in the sound quality or obviously the backdrop as well, that is the reason why. But final game week of the Dream Team season, everyone plays once apart from Chelsea, who have the Premier League match and then their Europa Conference League final. We're going to discuss who's still got stuff to play for and which teams might be on the beach now at this point. So we're going to start off looking at who has meaningful fixtures left. So I mentioned Chelsea. They're the only team to play twice, so they're probably going to be the most popular team to target this game week. But some other teams that have still got stuff to play for, we've got Liverpool and Arsenal, nothing to play for really. Both have got Champions League confirmed, obviously. Liverpool, first place, won the Premier League. Arsenal, second isn't quite confirmed yet, but Champions League was confirmed with that win against Newcastle. But 3 points are separating third to seventh. And that race for top five for the Champions League spots is quite hot at the moment. So City, Newcastle, Chelsea, Villa and Forest all separated by just 3 points. So those teams, City, Newcastle, Chelsea, Villa, Forest, will all have quite a lot to play for still on that final day. So City away at Fulham. Newcastle are home to Everton. You've got Chelsea, who of course have got that double game week. So it's Forest away, which is going to be a massive tie in the race for fifth place, but also Real Betis in that second match for the Europa Conference League final. Then you've got Villa, who are away at Manchester United, a Manchester United side that, of course, lost in the Europa League final last night. So where they're going to be at, who knows? And then, of course, Forest, I've just mentioned them. They will be playing Chelsea at home on the final day. Outside of those teams, we know obviously the relegation places were decided a little while ago, but we do still have a battle for 8th place. So Brighton and Brentford could still finish 8th position, which 8th could still have an outside chance of getting you Europa Conference football. So Palace secured European football with that FA Cup win, so congratulations to them. Obviously Spurs as well won the Europa League final last night, so a reluctant congratulations to them as well. But 8th place can still get you Europe this season if Chelsea finish 7th and win the Conference League, or Chelsea finish 6th, win the Conference League, and Newcastle finish 7th. So Brighton, Brentford, the only two teams that have a chance of that now. Bournemouth and Fulham went out of the race for 8th in that last Premier League fixture. So just Brighton and Brentford on top of those teams fighting for the top 5. So who do these two teams face? So Brighton have Tottenham away from home, a Tottenham who are probably going to be in party mode after that win last night. And then Brentford have got Wolves away. So Wolves obviously were on pretty good form recently. They're now 3 games on a 3-game losing streak. So again, that could be a nice fixture for both Brentford and Brighton on the final day. A couple of other fixtures I am going to throw out there. They're not really meaningful fixtures, but I still think they're fixtures that could be worth covering in this episode. So my team, Arsenal, away at Southampton on the final day. We do see a lot of goals on the final day, so I still think this could be a nice one to target if you're trying to get either the clean sheet for Arsenal, although that is looking a bit dodgy at the moment with a couple of injuries, or if you're looking to try and target a lot of goals in that one. But we did see City fail to deliver at Southampton recently. Of course, Liverpool, final day against Crystal Palace at home. So Arne Slot had sort of insinuated that the last game they were going to rotate, but this game they would still go quite strong. So I think Liverpool home to Crystal Palace could be a nice one. Crystal Palace, so a lot of our teams will have Palace players because of the last game week. They are away at Liverpool, so I don't think that is an ideal match to target, but we're going to cover it because a lot of us are stuck with Palace players now. You've got Bournemouth, so out of that top race for 8th, but they have got Leicester at home in that next match. So that looks like a prime fixture potentially for Bournemouth if you think they're still going to turn up and they're not on the beach. And then West Ham away at Ipswich. Ipswich already relegated and conceding a fair few goals. You've got a certain West Ham player on fire at the minute as well. So we are going to cover West Ham in this episode too. As it's the final episode and I am away, I'm going to try and speed through some of these players to target. We're not going to cover the team so much. And longer term picks, they're kind of out the window now. So we're going to approach this with a mindset of If you're leading your mini leagues, you're probably going to want to keep where you are, keep the popular players and sort of cover your opponents. But if you're chasing and you're going for a Hail Mary on the final day to try and close a big gap on points, we're going to throw a few differentials in there as well. So we're going to start things off with Chelsea, the only team with a double game week this week. So it's Forest away and then Betis, obviously, at a neutral ground in that Conference League final. We don't know for certain what sort of team they are going to put out for this Europa Conference League final, but you'd have to imagine now, with the Premier League being out of the way in that match against Forest, you'd imagine they'd have to go near to full strength for that Betis final, unless they do sort of have some sort of loyalty where they want to reward the guys that played the whole way through the tournament. But I just think you go full strength and try and still win that trophy, don't you? So Cole Palmer, no surprises. 75% owned in the top 1K now. 5 points, pretty disappointing against Man United, but I just think it's the safety pick, isn't it? So 75% owned in the top 1K. I think he's going to be the most popular captaincy pick, despite being a bit out of form. 1 goal, 2 assists in his last 20 matches. So he isn't prolific at the moment, but I still think he's the sort of guy that you want to get in for this double. I think he's probably going to be the most capped player this game week as well. So safety play, it's probably going to be Palmer. I think Enzo Fernandez, 4.6 million, did only get 2 points against Man United, but I'd say that he's my second favourite or maybe third favourite option from Chelsea for this double game week. So he seems to play most games and he's got the highest points for Chelsea over the last 6 game weeks. So 41 points in those last 6 game weeks, 7 goals, 13 assists for the season. So 20 attacking returns. He does chip in with returns as well. I just think Enzo, nice pick, probably one of the safer ones as well to go alongside Palmer. And Cucurella, I'd put him in that category as well. So last episode I was pretty disheartened that I felt like I brought in Cucurella a little bit too early, and it probably was a bit too early. And I was kind of ruined the fact that I didn't go Ait Nouri instead, who done pretty well. But actually this week, Cucurella gets on the score sheet, 16 pointer, so goal, clean sheet, and he's now got 7 goals for the season, so the most goals out of any of the defenders. So I think Marc Cucurella for the final, another really, really solid pick. After that, I think it does get quite difficult. So Reece James, you could throw him in there, 3.8 million, 2 points less than Palmer in the last 5 game weeks, so doing quite well recently. But he isn't starting sort of back-to-back games in double game weeks. So that is my slight worry. He's always had a little bit of injury concern there. Got an assist, 11 points against United. Lovely assist as well. But I'm just not 100% sure that he starts both games. I do feel like possibly where it's the last game of the season, maybe they could sort of take that risk and play him twice. But I don't feel as confident as I do with the likes of Enzo or Cucurella. The other name that I'd throw out there is probably Pedro Neto, 3.6 million. So not the best attacking returns, 6 goals, 7 assists for the season. But his last goal was in game week 32. But I would say that he is in the best 11. And I'm fairly confident they will start 2 matches. So Neto, I'll throw in the mix there. But I do think at that point you are starting to look at, are there better single game week options? I think there probably are. Let's look at Man City next. So they lost the FA Cup final 1-0 to Crystal Palace. But then they won 3-1 against Bournemouth at home in Kevin De Bruyne's last game at the Etihad. So Fulham have conceded 5 goals in 2 games and Man City play them next away from home. So I do feel like this is a pretty good game still to keep your Man City attackers, with Fulham conceding a lot of goals and City obviously needing to go and secure that Champions League spot. So I do think holding on to your City players is absolutely fine. Haaland, Marmoush and KDB hadn't started together as a free before this game week, and they've started together back-to-back this game week. So I still think holding on to these 3 could be quite good. Haaland, though, he got the penalty in the cup final, gave it to Marmoush, which would have annoyed a lot of us anyway, who had capped Erling Haaland. I had Marmoush in my team and I kind of felt a bit like, yeah, I'll take this. But then Marmoush missed it as well. So no goals in 3 games now for Erling Haaland since coming back. 91% owned in the top 1K. So I don't think there's any real gain to be had from Haaland. I just think it's a safety play that you probably just own him still. 30 goals for the season. I just don't think he's going to be highly capped now. 62% capped him this week, including myself, and he didn't deliver. The week before that, he didn't deliver either. So I think a lot of people will be put off captaining Erling Haaland. Marmoush, 49% owned in the top 1K, so he's still, I'd say, slightly a differential, but someone that you want to keep hold of, but I wouldn't necessarily bring him in. But he missed that penalty against Crystal Palace in the final, but then he scored an absolute worldie against Bournemouth. I imagine he's probably going to start that final game of the season with them needing to score goals. But again, I think it's a case of you hold him, but are there better options to bring in for a single? I think there probably are. And then Kevin De Bruyne, so not the dream finish to his Man City career that he'd have probably hoped for. So 2 3-pointers this game week, obviously losing the final, and then having to get subbed off early in that game against Bournemouth, I think because of that Kovacic red card. So could have been nice. He hit the crossbar from point blank range, which also would have been a Marmoush assist. So yeah, it could have been much more for KDB this week, but again, a little bit disappointing. 68% owned in the top 1K, so he is in a lot of teams, but there is still a little bit of wiggle room. So I do think he probably does start this final game now away at Fulham. I think they're going to probably play Haaland, Marmoush, KDB together again for this final game. But again, it's a case of I don't think you really bring him in. I just think these three, you hold them unless they're really holding a spot for someone else you want. In terms of defence, I don't think City defence against Fulham is the best. Fulham away from home, it is still quite a tough fixture. I wouldn't be bringing in City defenders for this game, but I think if you've got Diaz, Vardy, Ederson, you probably do hold them. A quick look at Newcastle. One, it is a nice fixture. So Everton at home this week. They lost 1-0 to Arsenal. They have got it all to play for still for the Champions League places, but Isak missing from the squad is a massive blow. So he's got a groin issue at the moment, and we're unsure if he's going to be available for the final day of the season. So I think it probably is a likely sell unless we get any leaks going into that final game. I don't think you can underestimate Everton as well. So they've won their last 2 matches. Moyes has got them playing pretty well. But again, Newcastle at home, fighting for the Champions League places. I still think it will be a Newcastle win. I just think it's harder to choose who is going to do well for Newcastle in this game week. Bruno Guimaraes, steady, multiple routes to points, 6, 9, 5 in his last 3 games. But it's a steady pick, isn't it? I don't think it's that sort of explosive pick that is going to be the differential that gets you over the line in your mini leagues. He's only got 5 goals, 8 assists for the season. So I don't think that's the best. I think if you're chasing more explosive picks, I think it's got to be Barnes or Gordon on either wing. So Harvey Barnes, 9 goals, 5 assists for the season, but no returns in his last 4 matches. But before that, he did have a 5-game scoring streak. So we know he's got it in his locker. Or Anthony Gordon, playing on the other wing, 9 goals, 7 assists. He's been good in previous seasons or earlier in the season, but no returns since he's come back from his injury layoff. So I think there is a little bit of risk there. If Isak isn't playing, maybe he takes the pens, but Wilson did start the game and come off in the 64th minute. So there's no guarantee that he would be the pen taker if one was to come, unless Wilson was off the pitch and Isak didn't start. So I think if you're chasing, an explosive differential could be Barnes or Gordon, but again, I don't particularly love it. Let's look at Villa. So again, one of the teams playing for the Champions League places, they've got United away from home this week. And I think this is going to be a good fixture. I think the mood is going to be a little bit sour around Manchester United after yesterday's poor performance. So Aston Villa have kept 3 clean sheets in a row, and United haven't scored in their last 3 games. So I think defensively could be a nice fixture if you've got Konsa or Martinez, both decent picks. Even if you bought them in, probably decent picks for this fixture. But the more explosive picks we'll be interested in are Ollie Watkins, who got an assist, 8 points in that 2-0 win against Spurs with 2 shots on target. So I back him to score in this game. I think this could be a nice fixture for him. He's had returns in his last 2 games and 17 goals, 15 assists for the season. So he is the sort of player that you know can score a brace. Probably has a hat-trick in the locker as well, if you are chancing it on the final day. Or Morgan Rogers, so assist, 6 points in that game against Spurs. 10% owned in the top 1K, so his ownership has come down a lot, and 26% owned Watkins as well. So I think both of those fall into that differential category. Both of them do have attacking returns in their locker. So I think these two could be quite explosive on the final day. Next up, Forest, so 2-1 win against West Ham, which will be really important in their run for the Champions League. It looks unlikely. It does look unlikely, but they face Chelsea on the final game of the season at home, so it's going to be a huge game in that race for the Champions League spots. Morgan Gibbs-White has had back-to-back goals, so 12 points against West Ham and a goal and assist against Leicester the week before, so 14 points in that one. 7 goals, 11 assists for the season. So again, another one that's got attacking returns in his locker. I don't feel as confident in this one as I would like a Rodgers or Ollie Watkins though from the previous slide. Elanga's got back-to-back assists again if you're fancying him in this match. 6 goals, 12 assists. But I think this Chelsea Forest game is going to be a pretty tight one. I don't see there being a ton of goals. Chris Wood blanked in the West Ham match, so just the 3 points. But again, 20 goals for the season. He's on pens. We know he's got it in his locker to score a break, maybe get a penalty goal, something like that. So I do think Chris Wood would be the one that I would go for if I was looking for a Forest player for the final day. But I just don't love the fixture. I think it's going to be a cagey affair, this one, between them and Chelsea. Next up, Brighton. So I don't feel like I've covered Brighton for a couple of weeks, but they've slowly crept their way back up, and now they're in contention for that 8th spot and a potential place in the Europa Conference League. So they've just beat Liverpool 3-2. Liverpool maybe slightly on the beach, we could say, but again, Brighton still getting it done. And now Brighton have Spurs away from home. Spurs that have just won the Europa Conference League, probably going to be partying, and I don't know what state they're going to be in come Sunday still. So I think this is going to be a lovely fixture for Brighton, and they are one of those teams that they have got the capacity for goals and high-scoring games, like the 3 they've just scored against Liverpool. But they always do seem to score a fair amount of goals. They've got a lot of attacking talent. So I'm going to go with Danny Welbeck as my differential from Brighton. So he got an assist, 9 points against Liverpool. But the reason why I'm putting him in there, 11 goals and 6 assists, it's not the best return. But João Pedro was missing again for this Liverpool match. And he apparently has had an altercation with Van Heck in training. And he's being linked away from Brighton as well. So I just think that Welbeck probably is going to start this final game of the season. And when Pedro's not playing, Welbeck's on pens. I'm just going to throw him out there as a potential differential. If you're looking for something a bit different in your mini leagues and you're chasing, I do feel like Brighton could score a fair few goals against Spurs in this final game. Not owned at all in the top 100 or top 1k. Another team fighting for that 8th spot is Brentford. So their winning streak has come to an end. 4-game winning streak came to an end with a 3-2 loss against Fulham. But they still are fighting for this spot. So 11% chance by Opta of getting that 8th spot and a potential Conference League place. Bryan Mbeumo has returned 3 games running now. So a goal in this game, of course, the week I decided to take Mbeumo out. That's all it took. Also a pen miss. So I do find myself a little bit fortunate with that one. 19 goals, 10 assists for the season. He's actually 51% owned still in the top 1k. So I do think there is still opportunity there. If you are up against someone that hasn't got Bryan Mbeumo in their team, I imagine they're probably not going to be bringing him in specifically for this game. So I still think just have a look at your mini leagues, have a look at your rivals. If someone hasn't got Bryan Mbeumo and you're trying to overtake them, I do still think there's an opportunity there as the penalty taker and as someone that's almost hit 20 goals for the season. The same as Visser as well, so 19 goals, 6 assists for the season. He did grab a goal in this game and got an assist, so 12 points for him. I still prioritise Mbeumo for those pens. It's not like he's going to, well, I could jinx this, but I don't think he's going to be giving away pens because he is such an elite penalty taker. So I would still opt for Mbeumo as the pen taker. Visser's 5.5% owned, so could be a differential, but I think just check your mini leagues. If they're a differential, you could get them in, or even if you're blocking someone that's got them and you're trying to hold your place in top spot, I think he's a good pick. Then my team, Arsenal, so 1-0 win against Newcastle has secured the Champions League place for us now. So we need 1 point, I think it is, to get to second. So does Arteta go strong for this final game? I do feel like Arsenal, or Arteta at least, will want to secure that second place. I know it's meaningless, but I do still think that he will want to secure it. So I think Arsenal are going to go strong, but Arsenal's strong is going to be without Saliba and without Timber by the sounds of things. So Saliba, you're really unlucky if you had him for this game. I didn't see a clean sheet coming in this one, but we kept it. The 20th clean sheet of the season, but Saliba off at half-time. So that would have been a real disappointing one for you guys. A hamstring injury, so I think he is going to miss that final game of the season, which probably means it's going to be Ben White and probably Calafiori filling in at centre-back. So Saka, 7 points in this game, bonus, tackles, shot on target, big chance created, basically everything but an attack in return. So 12 goals, 17 assists for the season. I still think he has that whole potential there against Southampton on the final day. even if you don't think he's been on the best of form for goals and assists. I think he's an outside captaincy contender as well, so I'll come on to the captaincy in a bit. But I still think he's a nice differential. Arsenal do tend to score a fair few goals on the final day, it does feel like. Someone that does keep scoring goals, though, is Declan Rice. So goal, 11 points in this game, 9 goals, 10 assists for the season. So 19 attacking returns is a brilliant season for Declan Rice. He's on the set pieces as well. We know he's on free kicks. We know he's on corners. But I would say that this doesn't feel like the final day explosive differential. It feels like the sort of pick that we want next season as a sort of steady Eddie pick for the longer term. I just don't think it feels explosive for the final day. Ødegaard or Trossard would be the two that I would opt for if you were trying to look for those final day goals. I do think, although Rice has done really well for goals and assists this season, I still think Ødegaard, Trossard, more likely to get attacking returns. So Ødegaard's had 3 assists in his last 4 games. And then Trossard's on 10 goals, 10 assists for the season, and is Arsenal's highest scoring player over the last 5 game weeks. So I think Trossard, Ødegaard would be the 2 differential picks that I'd go for on the final day, hoping for some explosive returns. Then Liverpool, so 3-2 loss against Brighton, but they are firmly on the beach, aren't they? Slot had sort of hinted that this game they would rotate again, which they pretty much did. But I have seen a few quotes from him that sort of make me feel like Liverpool will go strong, or as strong as they can, on the final day of the season. Just putting a bit of a show in that last day for the home fans. So I think they're going to go strong against Palace. Now, what the mindset will be like, what the level will be like is a different story. You've got Palace, who have just won the FA Cup, probably firmly on the beach themselves, have been partying, and it's a similar story for Liverpool as well. I think Glasner and Slot have both been in Ibiza having it large. So yeah, what sort of teams they put out or performances they put out, we don't know. But one thing I do know is I think Salah is going to play. He continues to play. He's the only one that doesn't seem to get rotated. His last goal was 4 games ago, so he's not in the best of form. But again, he had a really close opportunity in this Brighton game to grab that next goal. He's on 33 goals, 23 assists for the season. You just know that he wants to carry on scoring in these final few. So at 20% owned in the top 1K, I do still think Salah is a nice differential. It sounds silly to say Salah's a differential, but a lot of people have sold him over the last few weeks, and for good reason. But if you're trying to back a differential to score you 2 goals in a game, although he's out of form, I still think you know Salah has got it in his locker on his day at home. So I think Salah, again, nice differential, but I still would avoid the defence. I've had Alisson in goal, and I can't remember exact numbers, but I did a post the other day that since I brought Alisson in for the injured Martinez, who turned out not to be injured, I think he's cost me about 43 points over Martinez. So yeah, this Liverpool defence, they're not switched on like they used to be. So yeah, avoid defence, I think, from Liverpool, but I still think Salah is a differential. Palace have got Liverpool away from home, and ordinarily this would not be a fixture that you target, but I'm going to cover them in this episode because we've all got Palace players in our team. If you haven't, you probably have been struggling over the last couple of game weeks. So congratulations to Palace on winning the FA Cup. Deservedly, they have been out partying, but they still put a 4-2 win against Wolves together this game week. Eddie Nketiah with 2 goals, Chilwell with 1, and then Eze, benched for this game and definitely deserved that rest, but still scored in a 9-minute sub appearance, Eze. So 6 consecutive matches he's scored in now, 7 goals in those 6 games. It's an unbelievable streak, and fair play to anyone that captained Eze this game week. It's been incredible. So a goal in both games. I do feel like that 9-minute goal off the bench was pretty fortunate, but again, fantastic. It took some cojones probably to go for that Eze pick, so fair play to anyone went there. 17% of the top 1K captain this week. I think, considering he got the rest in the last game, I think there's probably a good chance that he is going to start this final game of the season, and the form that he's in, I think you're probably just going to have to keep him, especially if you're leading in your mini leagues. Ownership is higher, the form is there, so leading, you keep him. But if you are trying to look at someone to potentially sell and you are looking for a differential, maybe he is one of the players that you go against, but it is a risk. With Daniel Munoz, he's been fantastic again. So man of the match in the final, back-to-back assists, so got an assist in that final and had a goal ruled out as well. So again, showing his attacking threat. I think you just keep him there for the final game of the season. Maybe there's a chance that he is rotated, but they never seem to rest him at all. Why do it now in the final game of the season? So I think Daniel Munoz, you just keep him there. But I think the other Palace players, maybe if you've got a Mateta or a Sarr, I do think they are expendable and they wouldn't be buys, in my opinion. Last couple of differentials. So Bournemouth have Leicester at home. Unfortunately, though, this game, there's nothing on the line now, so they are out of that race for 8th place. They've lost their last 2 matches against City and Villa, which probably was expected, but they have had a slight dip in form. They face Leicester, which is a prime fixture, but Leicester had a little bit of uplift in their form as well. So 3 matches unbeaten for Leicester, although 2 of those wins were Ipswich and Southampton. So take it with a pinch of salt, maybe. I think Evanilson is the play if you do want to go for a differential from Bournemouth. So 12 goals, 5 assists for the season. Hit the post in this Man City match. His last goal was against Arsenal in Game Week 34. And then he had 6 goals in 6 games between Game Week 26 and Game Week 30. So he has got a decent ceiling, but just I'm questioning a little bit the motivation from Bournemouth at the moment. But he's another player that won't be highly owned. They definitely will be a differential going into the final day. And Leicester home is a prime fixture. I think Kluivert probably would have been in the mix, but his last 3 matches, he's had a 45-minute appearance, a 45-minute appearance, and a 65-minute appearance in the last 3. So I think you have to go Evanilson now. And then finally, one of the most juicy differentials for the game week, it's Jared Bowen from West Ham. So 4 goals, 2 assists in his last 5 matches, and he's got Ipswich away from home. So again, really nice fixture against one of the relegated sides, a side that have lost their last 2 matches, lost 4 of their last 6 games as well. So they're conceding goals, and Bowen keeps on scoring. So he's the second highest scoring striker over the last 5 game weeks, just 2 points behind Visser in first. So I do think Bowen is a really nice differential if you're backing him to carry on his explosive form. Again, someone that's not very highly owned and will be a nice differential for this game week. A little look at captaincy. So despite his poor form recently, Cole Palmer, I think, has to be top of the list. So I'm expecting 2 starts. He's on pens. Chelsea, the only team to have 2 games in this final game week. So I think by default, Palmer probably is going to be there, even though it isn't the most exciting. But yeah, again, I expect him to be the popular pick. If you're holding rank, you're happy with your rank, or you're just defending in your mini leagues, I just think that's the play. It's boring, but yeah, I think you just do it. But I think if you are going aggressive and you are trying to sort of close quite a big gap, I think you've either got to go for multiple differentials with your transfers, or you've got multiple differentials in your team, or you have to go for a differential captain. So if you want to go Chelsea, try and get the 2 fixtures and try and just outscore Palmer with those 2 fixtures. I think it's Enzo or Cucurella, just because they're the only 2 that I'm pretty certain will start. So Enzo and Cucurella, you've had 41 points over the last 5 game weeks for Enzo and 39 over the last 5 game weeks for Cucurella. So the 2 highest scoring players at Chelsea at the minute, outscoring Palmer. But just 7 goals for Enzo and 7 goals for Cucurella this season. So not the most explosive. But maybe if you're expecting a clean sheet from Chelsea in these 2 games, Forest don't score a ton of goals. And then Betis in the final could be a cagey one. Maybe Cucurella for the opportunity to get the clean sheet as well could be a shout. But if you want to go for some of these single game week teams, these are some options that I would look at. So Salah, Palace home, final day in front of the home fans. Recent form isn't great, but we know the ceiling that Salah's got on his day. Brian Mbumo, a guy in form, he's got a decent fixture away at Wolves, who have just lost 3 in a row. And then it's 1 goal, 2 assists in his last 3 for Mbumo. So nice differential cap again. Bowen, and again, really, really good form. So Salah could be the highest ceiling pick that isn't in form, but Bowen is probably the guy in form at the minute. So 4 goals, 2 assists in his last 5 games, and he plays the relegated Ipswich. Or Bukayo Saka, Southampton away from home. I'm expecting it to be a high-scoring game for Arsenal. That might be my bias. We expected City to be a high-scoring game there, and it was a 0-0 recently. So there is that to it. But I think Saka, even if he isn't fully firing, we know that he does have returns in his locker and he does score points for a variety of ways. So I think Salah, decent option as well. And then Eze, if you catch wind that Eze's starting, I know it's Liverpool away from home, but if you back him to continue this crazy run of scoring, 7 goals in 6 games, he's on pens, could also be a shout against Liverpool, who you'd back to win. But again, you probably think they're going to concede against Crystal Palace. So there are a couple of differential captains if you wanted to go against the Palmer cap. Here's how my team has got on for game week 36. So it's been a decent game week for me this week. 109 points for the game week. It's been a green arrow from 175th to 149th on the overall leaderboard. So finally stopped the rot of the last couple of game weeks. But I did take out Brian Mbeumo for him to go on and score a goal, which I knew was a possibility. I was just trying to decide who I wanted to take out of Saka and Mbeumo. And I want Saka for the Southampton game. So I've kept Saka. I wanted to get Palmer in early. So Palmer effectively came in for Mbeumo. Mbeumo outscored him by 2 points. I think I was pretty fortunate with that penalty miss. And then Eze came in for Cunha, which was a landslide. I knew I needed to get Eze this week. 18 points for Eze and just the 1 point for Cunha. Cunha not starting. So transfers left me 15 points up this game week. I think that went pretty well. So in goal, 4 points from Alisson. Again, he hasn't been very good for me. Lost about 40 odd points since bringing him in for Martinez after Martinez went off with an injury and looked like he was going to miss the game. It was a Cardiff game quite a few weeks back. But yeah, Alisson has been terrible for me in goal since bringing him in, but he's going to stay there. Cucurella, so I moaned about him last week. He's paid me back this week. So 16 points for him, clean sheet, goal, and the highest scoring in terms of goals defender in the game. Munoz, another attacking return, 15 points this game week, so decent at the back. And then Vardiol, well, he didn't get a clean sheet. He still come away with 7 points. So you take that, and I don't think I'm probably going to do anything with my back 4 there. I think I'm just going to keep them in. I think the gains are probably to be made from the players in that front 7, but there are going to be some hard decisions. So Eze, 18-point haul this week. That turned out to be the captaincy play. I was a little bit 50-50 between the two, but I did think that City would win both games, and I thought Haaland would be involved in the goals if they did win both. Turns out they didn't. Would it have been another story if Haaland had ended up taking that pen in the FA Cup final? We'll never know, but yeah, do feel like the swing was pretty great considering Eze scored off the bench in 9 minutes in the second game, and then Haaland got the pen and ended up giving it to Marmoush. So fair play if we went for the Eze cap, but a really big swing there. Bruno Fernandes, 9 points for the game week. De Bruyne, 6, Saka, 7, and Palmer, 5. So despite no attacking returns from Bruno, De Bruyne, Saka, Palmer, still pretty solid points. I've covered Haaland. He was my captain this week. 6 doubled to 12, so disappointing return. But then Omar Marmoush. So obviously when I saw Haaland giving away that pen to Marmoush, I was a bit disappointed that he was my captain. But having Marmoush, I felt like I was finally going to get that Marmoush goal. And then he missed it. It came away with a 0-pointer, I think it was, in that cup final. So I thought that was even more misery. I just haven't been able to get on the end of an attacking return for Marmoush this season, despite him being on a pretty hot streak at one point. But then against Bournemouth, he scored an absolute worldie. So pretty pleased to finally grab a goal from Omar Marmoush. 10 points for him in this one. So what am I thinking with my team? So this is my team pre-transfers at the minute. So I'm just going to stick the armband on Cole Palmer for now. I just think it's the default captaincy pick. And then I'm sticking the vice on Cucurella, just because they've both got 2 fixtures. I haven't fully decided yet whether I'm going to go for that differential cap or leave it on Palmer. Some context for my team. So 149th, I'm 23 points off of the top 100. So I just need to decide whether I want to take a bit of a risk, take a punt and try and finish inside of that top 100, or just stay where I am or similar position. 149th would be my best ever finish. So I'm pretty happy with where I am at the moment. But it would be nice to get a top 100 finish. So if I wanted to make up that ground and get that 23-point swing to try and get in the top 100, I would likely need 1 or 2 differentials, or I think 1 differential and a differential captain pick. So looking at my team in the top 1k ownership, Cucurella's at 29%, Marmoush is at 49%, Saka 41%, and Alisson 7%. I think they're the only real differentials, you could call them, in my team. The rest of my team is pretty template, pretty high ownership players, so I don't think there's any gains to be made outside of those players, really. I think Enzo will likely be coming into my team. I think he's the next best Chelsea player outside of Palmer, Cucurella, so I think I'm probably going to bring him in this week. But the problem is, who do I then take out? Because I want Marmoush, I want Haaland. I think they're going to score goals against Fulham still. Palmer obviously stays. Saka, the whole reason I kept him last week was to have him for Southampton, so he stays. Then I'm just looking at De Bruyne, Fulham away, Bruno, Villa at home, and Eze, Liverpool away. So I think it's probably going to have to be out of those 3. You could say maybe De Bruyne has played his last game at home, so maybe he doesn't get the final game, but it's a meaningful fixture, and they've just played De Bruyne, Haaland, Marmoush for their 2 most meaningful fixtures of the season. So I think he probably starts. You could maybe point a narrative that Bruno Fernandes, Villa at home, nothing to play for now. Will they go full strength, or will they just rotate the team? I think it's going to be a pretty horrible reception for them at Old Trafford. So maybe Bruno goes, but then you're going against a really highly owned player, a great player, and someone that's 95% owned or 99% owned in the top 1k. And then Eze as well is 95% owned currently. So if I take out either Eze or Bruno Fernandes, you're taking out a pen taker, you're taking out a great asset. It's a tough one, but do you do it on the final day to try and make up ground? Your team's got to give somewhere if you are going to bring in one of these differentials. So I think one of Eze, Bruno, De Bruyne will make way for Enzo Fernandez for the 2 fixtures versus 1. But then I'm not thrilled on a second Chelsea player. So it would be Neto or Reece James for me if I was going to go for another Chelsea player. I think Neto is probably, I think in 2 games versus 1 of someone else, I think you could probably chase the haul from a single game week player over Neto. And then Reece James, I'm just not certain that he's going to start 2 games. So I think I will look to go for a single game week differential with that second transfer. But again, if it's going to be an attacking transfer, it's going to be out of Eze, Bruno and De Bruyne again. So I may potentially be losing 2 of those 3, which could be dangerous on the final game of the season. Although 23 points is the difference between me and top 100, it's about the same me to top 200 or 200th place. So I've got just as much possibility of falling backwards as I have going forwards if I decide to take that risk. But that's what I'm looking at the moment. Probably Enzo Fernandez plus a differential, and maybe replacing 2 of those big hitters. So Eze, Bruno and Kevin De Bruyne. But I'm going to keep that under wraps because I want to maximise my chances of potentially pulling it off on the final day. So good luck with whatever you decide on the final game of the season. Thank you for following along for this season. And of course, we'll be doing a final episode wrapping up how the last game week went. And then after that, I'll see you for the next season. And I won't go into it now, but there's been a few announcements that look pretty positive for changes to Dream Team for next season. So really excited for that one. Thanks for joining us. Drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.